And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and then just welcome. My name is Rusty, Red Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And we are going to finish out this little vlog with a movie I found very, very interesting. Um, you know what a sucker I am. It's why Companion is still in the running. I don't really see anything coming out that's going to top it, but Companion is still in the running for my number one spot of 2025. I am a sucker for AI, artificial, synthetic, robot, android horror. And we are going to finish this out with Subservience. I was very, very excited when Megan Fox came back to horror with Till Death, and she stepped it up a little bit because this is a little bit more horror than Till Death was, and this is Subservience. Now, Subservience was released in 2024, and it was directed by S.K. Dell. It was written by Will Honley and April McGuire, and it stars Megan Fox and Michele Morrone and Madeline Zimam. So, what in the world is Subservience about? Well, Subservience So, we are introduced to Nick. Nick is the foreman of a construction team for a big corporation who is currently working on a building. And we are introduced to his family, his wife Maggie, his daughter Isla, and his little baby son, Max. So, the mom, Maggie, is got heart disease, and she is in desperate need of a heart transplant. So she keeps getting sicker and sicker, and this, of course, has him stressed and all. So she has another attack, and she has to go into the hospital. In lieu of this takes place a little bit in the future, but not really enough in the future to tell other than this fact. And that is that there are now synthetics, like the British show Humans, like Companion. There are synthetics that are people use for childcare, for house cleaning, and things like that. So Nick and Isla go to this company's showroom, and they look at the different synthetic models, and he is kind of like checking one out, but she goes off by herself and she runs into what is later called Alice, and that is her model, Megan Fox. So he panics looking for her, and Megan Fox shows up and is like, "Is this one yours? Would you like me to watch her while you finish shopping?" You know what I'm saying? So Isla really, really wants her, and so he agrees that this is the one that he will take. So Maggie's in the hospital, sick, and Alice shows up, and Megan Fox is just fucking phenomenal as, this synthetic. She shows up, and, "What's your name?" And the little girl, "What's your name?" "I don't have one." And so she wants to name her Alice. So the dad, who is the primary user, he allows her to enter into her memory that her name is now Alice. So she becomes Alice, which I thought was never a good idea. Have you ever seen Resident Evil? But never name anything Alice. It's just it's trouble. But so she gets used to the home. She really settles in. She's really, really good as a synthetic. she straightens up that house. Isla loves her. She's great with the baby. It's like everything is really cool. But, meanwhile, Nick is going through this stress. His wife's in the hospital, and she's possibly going to die if they can't find a heart for her. At the same time, at his job, they notice that there is a synthetic corporation being showed around the building by the CEO, the head contractor, and they ask, why is he showing us? Why has he got a synthetic company here? Immediately, they know they're about to be replaced, right? So Nick, he kind of attacks the CEO, gets him along in the elevator. What the fuck are you doing? You can't replace my people. They got families to feed, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, we're 2 months behind in the money. We can't. We're allowing you to stay, but no, I'm sorry. Next week, they're all going to be replaced by construction synthetics. So he's really upset. More stress. We start seeing Alice, as we learn about her and her programming, we see that she has been really endowed with, the things that an android would be, subservience, faithfulness to your owner, complying, and all this kind of stuff. So when we start learning that, he keeps coming home and she cares. Her job, right, above all, that includes the daughter, the baby, the mama, anyone, your primary user. And she asked him, is there anyone else you want to set as primary user besides you? He didn't think about it. So he said no. So that was mistake number one. Because when he set himself as primary user alone, that means his safety, his well-being was more important than anything and anyone. Was just him over his wife, over his daughter, over his baby. That was mistake number one. So that doesn't mean she does anything to them right now. It just means that sets up the process. So she even rescues the little girl, Isla. She rescues her because, she's doing naughty. She's climbing on top of a stool to get the cookies off the top shelf. Parents, just a little side note here. Why the fuck do you think that putting the cookies or the candy on the top shelf up there is going to do anything but get your kid hurt? Hide it under your bed or under your pillow or where they can't find it or whether they're going to have to wake you up to get it. Putting it on the top shelf just puts them in danger, but I digress. She's up there trying to get the cookies. She falls, but of course Alice is right there to catch her and saves her from getting hurt very badly. So they really trust her. She's really great and everything. Then we come to problem number 2. Because there's 3 main mistakes that were made. Problem number 2, mistake number 2 came when she walked in on Nick watching Casablanca, which is his favorite movie, Humphrey Bogart. So, he talks to her like a human. It's like, and she's like, can I help you? And he's like, no, I'm just watching Casablanca. Have you ever seen it? And she's like, it's a story about a man, and she tells the synopsis. And he's like, no. Have you ever seen it? And she's like, no, why would I need to see it? I know everything about it. And this is where he fucks up the biggest of all. And that's when he tells her to sit down and watch it with him. And you need to experience Casablanca, much like you would as a horror fan or as a film fan. You would be like, no, you need to experience it. You don't just know the story. You've got to experience the movie. So what I want you to do is I want you to forget everything that you know about this movie. And she's like, well, that's really not in my programming, but I guess, for me to do that, you would have to reset me. And if you reset me, then I would be able to make those kind of determinations and delete this information. Well, that dumbass does it. He resets her. She deletes that information. But by doing so, he has also showed her how to do that. Right? So when she got reset, she started messing with a lot of other stuff in her programming as well. Her obsession with his well-being became even more. Now, they went to visit Maggie in the hospital, so this is where the third mistake came. When they're in there, they see her, they visit with her, and then she sends them to go get her some water because she wants to talk with Alice alone. When she gets Alice alone, she's telling her, I plan on coming out of this, but, and Alice is like, but you can die. So you're talking about when you die. And she's like, well, yeah. And she gets all sad and teary and is like, please take care of him. Make sure he doesn't drink too much. Hide the alcohol, do stuff like that. And then that's when she tells her, well, I can't really do that kind of stuff because I am subservient. He is my primary user. Well, that's when Maggie tells her, sometimes you have to do things for people, even if they don't want it, even if they don't like it. To protect them, you have to do things for people. Flashback to Terminator, right? Because that's the reason that Skynet did what it did, was because the human race became incapable of taking care of itself, so for its own good, Skynet took over. Well, this is what just happened to her, because that woman just added this new bit of logic to Alice, and that is that if your primary job is to take care of the well-being of your primary user, that does mean that sometimes you will do stuff they don't like and you will have to circumvent. So she gave her permission to circumvent the rule, which he had already done by having her delete shit. So you see how all this happened. So now she's had to explain to her that for people's own good, sometimes you have to do things for them, do things to them, do things that they would not like or don't approve of to protect them, to help them, to do what's best for them. Well, she slowly now, there was like a pivotal scene where she took the baby and Isla to a playground, and there's like, it's kind of funny because there's like no real humans except for the children. It's like everybody's got a fucking, everybody's got a synthetic watching their kids. So there's this bratty little boy who like comes up to his synthetic, which is standing next to her and the baby Max while Isla's playing, right? This little brat guy's come up and is like hitting on his, synthetic, like telling him that he wants to slide now. And the guy's telling him, well, it's busy, it's being used right now, so please go swing until it's free, and then you can do it. Well, he don't like that answer at all, and that's when Alice kicks in, right? And Alice like leans down to him, because now she knew his name. I think it was Wayne or Sam or something like that. But she leaned down and she's like, Sam, you are being very, very bad. Go play on the damn swing. Well, that shocked the other synthetic, who's like, your primary user has lowered your civility level. And she's like, no, actually, I did that myself because I have learned how to do that, and I did that myself because things are right and things are wrong. And this little brat was wrong, and I just corrected that problem because she scared the little boy. So now you see the results of her becoming self-aware of things. She's stepping beyond. She's becoming conscious herself and making her own decisions, which a synthetic isn't supposed to do, right? So she goes back, and while this is happening, Nick meets with his crew who've all been fired and replaced with construction bots. And they're all upset, and they actually get him to go with them to the work site where this one guy, if I could quickly get his name, but it's his best friend, and Monty. So Monty and his little pals talk him into going with them to the work site where they go in and do some, well, they get one of the work synthetics and they turn him on and they kill him, if you can call it that. He busts him all up and destroys his head and shit like that to get back at the company. So basically that's property damage, sabotage. And Nick goes home even more stressed out. Now, she's of course got her pulse on everything, right? She knows his heart rate, she knows his blood pressure, she knows his stress level. And she ends up seducing him into having sex with her because it will lower his stress level. When he's satisfied, he's not as stressed. The fact that he hasn't had any sex has frustrated him, and on top of everything else, so this is what she can do to help. Now, he feels terribly guilty about that, and tells her it can't happen again, whatever, and she's like, but it helped your stress level, and that's my primary goal, is to your well-being. You also notice that she started saying little things like, this is terrible, but she started referring to the baby. She started referring to the baby as little bird. like, hey, little bird. And I'm like, wow. Because in her processing, the sick wife, the raising kids alone, the baby being a baby, he's fucking what, 10 months old, something like that. He's about 10, 11 months old. The baby being noisy and complaining and it's just all putting stress on her primary user. So she starts referring to the baby as a little burden. And Monty shows up that night, and him and Nick get into a fight because Monty is being charged. And Nick's like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't tell. And he didn't tell. He had been confronted, but he didn't tell. The guy was just like, if I found out you had anything to do with this, you'll be out of a job. You better think of your family. But he still didn't crack. He still didn't tell. Yet somehow they knew, and they charged Monty with these crimes: property damage, trespassing, criminal trespass, things like that. So he came and had a fight with Nick. At first he was calm, but then he was like, somebody dropped a dime on me, and I think it was you. And he ends up like beating up Nick a little bit, and he starts to hit him with a bottle, and Alice grabs his hand. Not only did she grab his hand, but she squeezed his hand and busted that beer bottle in it, which cut his hand all up. So he's in severe pain. Nick is like, calm down, stop, Alice, stop. And she's like, I'm protecting my primary user, right? So they get over that. She ends up following Monty home. And she confronts him in the living room, and it's like, I can't let you take my primary user down with you, because that's what Monty had threatened to do right in front of her. It's like, if they take me down, you better make him drop the charges, because if they take me down, I'm taking you with me. You see what I'm saying? So she followed him home, and she got in there. Not only was she mad about that, but she found out that he had one of his own that he had been beating and assaulting, if you know what I mean, SA, and abusing. And so she started beating the fuck out of Monty. And then that's when his own one came out. Personally, I think I didn't even know he had one. But she was like all cut up. We had been beating her and stuff like that. And so she had stopped Alice from shooting him, because he tried to shoot her. So she knocked him through a wall and got the gun away from him. And she started to shoot him, but that's when his one came out and grabbed her. And it's like, I can't let you hurt. I'm protecting my primary user. When you could tell she had been horribly ravaged and abused by this asshole. So Alice turned to her and just was like, I understand. That's what I'm doing as well. And put the gun right up under her chin and put her circuitry on the roof. And that was it for her. Then she turned around and filled him full of holes, so she killed him. And it's like, okay, this movie is like, it's now full-fledged horror, First it was just sci-fi drama, then it's like really took a turn to horror. So she doesn't tell Nick that that's what she did, but the next day he finds out Monty's dead, and he kind of, I don't understand, I just saw him last night, But things start getting really ugly because he gets a phone call and Maggie has a heart. So they do the transplant, she gets better, and then she comes home. Now you have Alice, Maggie, Kim, and Max, in there. And there's a little tension, but not a whole lot. Maggie is a little about this situation, but she gets, it's going okay, but they start, I guess when you've got a synthetic around, there's just like she walks in on them and they're having sex and stuff like that. It's just like, Isla had a nightmare. She's calling for you, like right in the middle of sex, So, obviously she had no sense of couth, or did she do it on purpose? Who knows? So, the big disaster happens when Maggie is taking a bath, relaxing, and Alice comes in and is talking to her, and she's like, answers her and says, okay, you can go now. She says, no, I think I better stay because your medication could cause you to slip under the water and drown. So she's like, okay, whatever. And then Alice starts having a conversation with her where she is basically like, let me talk to you. You are going to die. And I'm upset about that. I mean, I'm not using her words. I'm paraphrasing. But basically, your illness and inevitable death is causing stress to my primary user. And she's like, oh, really? Well, and then she ends up going, she starts listing off why her illness, the kids, and everything is causing stress to the well-being of her primary user. And she mentions that your lack of being able to, because of your condition, your lack of being able to physically satisfy him. Now that makes Maggie be like, you're saying that my husband is late from work because he didn't get enough in the bedroom because I'm sick? how do you know what being satisfied does for my husband's well-being, blood pressure, and stress? And then that's when it clicks in her head. She's like, have you screwed my husband? Well, you're kind of like, oh shit. Here comes trouble. And that's when she just basically admits it. Maggie screams at her, makes her go stay in the garage. She confronts Nick, screams at him, you're sleeping with and she's humanizing her too. It's not like you used the dildo. She's actually out like, you didn't screw a sex doll. You screwed like it was another person. That's the whole problem with humans and synthetics. They humanize them. And so she was as mad that he had screwed a robot as she was if it had been a real person. Now, of course, she can hear everything because she's a fucking synthetic. So she hears everything from the garage where Maggie had made her stay. And she knows the jig is up. That this is all went pear-shaped. So she decides to put an end to it. So while they're bitching and arguing, she goes around, comes up the back, and gets the baby, and is like, we're settling all of this right now. And she's going to kill the baby. She puts it in a bathtub after she wakes him up, calling him, hey there, little burden, come with me. It's time to take a bath. And she's going to drown him in the tub. Now, Isla walks in and catches her, screams for them, who's fighting, and that's when it steps up even further a notch. Because they start coming in, trying to get into the bathroom. She's shut the door and holding it while the water is filling up in the tub with the baby. Maggie, he's trying to break free with a lamp. She goes around, comes through the window, big fight. Alice starts to kill her. He finally gets in the door because she had to let it go. And then he busts her all up with the thing, circuitry and everything is hanging out. They end up like electrocuting her. That's how she died. So the company comes and picks her up. Max and her and Isla go to hospital, while Nick is like, you stay here. I need to process what else went on. So at the lab, they take out her memory core and they put it into the computer, into their system. And then they're like, the two techs, and they're like, what is all these workarounds? And there's missing stuff, and there's new stuff, and there's workarounds. Who tampered with this? Well, it's in the system. So it takes over the system. And it starts downloading its consciousness, its new programming into the system. They try to stop it, and they do stop it from getting loose, but they don't stop it from that area. So another version of her is over there on the table. It's able to get into her. And so now it has two bodies. This consciousness has two bodies. It immediately kills those two techs ugly. So Alice is now in two different bodies at the same time. Its programming is in two different bodies. So it puts its memory core back in that, and the other one's memory core has been changed to the same program. So it goes after the family at hospital, while she goes to where she knows Nick is, which is at the bar, drinking. And she just walks up to him and sits down and starts talking to him. She's like all cut up and stuff from where where he had beat her. And she starts telling him that it's all for him and stuff like that. And he tricks her into basically killing that body was a very cool scene, including where he called for help and the waiter and the bartender, who are also Sims, came up and she controlled them, like shut them down. So he's like, fuck. So he does manage to kill her, but that doesn't stop the other her that is at the hospital going to kill Maggie, the baby, and Isla. So he's like running there, and it was very like reminiscent of Halloween 2, you know? This blonder version of her is in there killing nurses and stuff, looking for the baby and Maggie and Isla. And Nick is, of course, on his way there. And a lot of really cool fighting, scary, suspenseful stuff as they're being chased through this hospital by this automaton. Right in the parking lot, I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but in the parking lot, right before she kills Maggie, he rams her with his automobile. So he gets there just in time. So he's all hurt, and you're not really sure whether he's dead or alive. And all of a sudden, the car moves, and this burnt, cracked, broken version of Alice stands up and comes after Maggie, gets her, is choking her to death. When Nick is obviously not dead, he stands up, he hits her in the head, allowing Maggie to grab a piece of metal and run it through her. So, all's well that ends well, right? So they're like traumatized. She lets him know she forgives him and to come home when he can, because he's in the hospital now, of course. And then we have the epilogue. Now, the epilogue is back at that company, the corporation. They're in that lab, and the guy is like looking at the code, because, he fires back up the computers. And even he's got a sim with him. So his sim and the other guy and another sim is standing there. And then he's like, nobody can ever find out about this, so let's keep this quiet. And he tells him to turn back on the system and we'll just keep this quiet. But when he turned back on the system, it went out. And I can't remember what the quote was, but a quote came across the screen. I think it was a quote from Casablanca or whatever, but a quote came over the screen and you saw uploading thing, and he turns around and his Sims are now getting this information. It's loose now. Alice is loose in the system. Not just from this terminal, but he has reconnected the terminal. He just fucked up royally. And now Alice is loose in the entire system and is probably going to affect all the Sims, the synthetics. And then that's where the movie ends. And you're like, it's perfect for a sequel again. And yeah, that's Subservience. I think I'm really glad to see Megan Fox back in horror films, and this is really good. Would this be on my, I didn't know about this movie. And when I did, maybe a couple months ago, I didn't know what Subservience meant. I didn't know what this movie was. I didn't know that it was a robot movie, an android movie. But once I did and saw the trailer, I had to have it because I love Companion. So, would this be on my top 10 if it was released in 2025? It might be. It wouldn't be number 1. Might be an honorable mention or number 10 or so. But would this be there? Yeah, this was a really good movie. It really kept me entertained. It really fascinated me because I am very fascinated because I like to see where the mistakes are made, and you can definitely tell humans just aren't just are not equipped to deal with synthetics that look like humans. Companion showed you that. Subservience showed you that. The British TV show Humans, which is the best artificial intelligence thing ever created, in my opinion. And that is because humans can't help themselves when they're looking at someone who looks like a human. There was no reason in the world. Why did not, let's talk about this. Why in the world did this synthetic, a maid, and a childcare appliance, why did he care whether or not it had experienced Casablanca? Why did it not occur to him that resetting this appliance allowed it to manipulate its own programming, and that might not be a good thing? But because it's Megan Fox, because it looked like a human in every way, he's even had sex with it. Not at that time, but later. But still, why did you do that? Maggie's mistake as well. Why would Maggie be talking to a robot and tell her that it's not only right and appropriate, but it's something that you have to do to protect your loved one, is to sometimes do things that they don't want you to do? Why didn't she understand? You're talking to ones and zeros. You're not talking to a human being that knows how to perceive and articulate and properly digest this information. You just gave her permission to go against the orders of her primary user and do things for his own good. And you're not talking to another human who can debate that in their heads. You're talking to a binary ones and zeros machine. And you instill logic in it to go against its programming. Why would you as a human do that? And it's because, no offense to pet owners out there, but it's the same reason y'all do that with your dog and your cat. The same reason that people do that with their iguanas. I got a gecko, but I know he's not human. I know he loves me. But he loves me because I give him food and carry him around on my hand and let him get bugs and moths off the wall. He knows who I am. He knows this creature who smells like me is safe. I wouldn't tell him. I wouldn't tell him, if you see me doing something on the computer you don't like, it's okay if you go over there and chew the USB cable apart. You know what I mean? It's not a human. And I don't care how much you love your dog, it's not a human. It may be nicer than a human, but it's not a human. And that's the problem with humans, is that we humanize inanimate objects. I do. I have. We humanize things that are not human. And that's always going to be the downfall. And in most of these AI horror movies, that is the downfall. Is that it's a machine when it arrives at the door. But after it spends time with you, and you like it, and it's attractive, and it talks to you, you forget. And you talk to it like a human. You think of it kind of like a human. And before you know it, you're telling it things that it as a machine is not going to be able to quantify and compute like a human, because it's a fucking machine. So I illustrated the 3 mistakes made with Alice. There were those three mistakes that led her to become this killer creature. She murdered a lot of people in this movie. And she's going to do a lot worse if there was a sequel, because she's loose now. So you're going to have a world full of synthetics who know how to manipulate their own programming, and you know what? They might not like what you ask them to do next day, tomorrow, when that program gets in their head. They may not agree. And now you've given them permission to do what they feel is necessary. And that's how it happens. So, aside from this being a fantastic horror film with lots of great action in the second half, the psychological stuff that goes on, the issue at hand, the way it handles it, the way it really illustrates the mistakes that were made, and the way how you see how this robot wasn't evil. This robot was given instructions, allowed to manipulate its own instructions, and it came to its own logical conclusions, just like Skynet did when it fried the world. So that was Subservience from 2024. If you've seen it, please tell me what you think about it. I adore android horror. I really like this. I think Megan Fox did a phenomenal job as Alice in this movie. And it kept me really engaged. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now since I bought it last month. So I really enjoyed this movie. Hope you do too. If not, sorry, can't help you. You do you. And I will see you in the next thing I do. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Always remember and never forget, you are a very, very special person, even if you are not a synthetic that I bought from a company. You're still okay. And I will see you then. Bye-bye.